everyone, welcome back to the channel. You may recall from last week's video that we finished up the story of Abraham and Sarah, and so the natural progression would be to talk about Isaac, the son of Abraham. But we're actually going to go one step further. Isaac's story in the Bible is somewhat minimized. We just have a few brief snippets of his life, and instead we're going to focus on the lives of his children, Jacob and Esau, and in particular the story of Jacob. So we're going to be starting in chapter 25, in verse 19. And it says, "This is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his plea. And Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, 'If all is well, why am I like this?' So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 'Two nations are in your womb. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger.' So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau. Afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them." So, as a small note, this is one reason I recommend having an actual Bible instead of simply reading along on the screen. In an actual Bible, and perhaps in Bible apps, I'm unsure of that, I don't use those too often, they'll have footnotes and little explanations at the bottom of the page. And in this case, they will explain the meaning of the names given. And you can infer it in some regard to the text, because they'll often say, and this is why they are named such and such. And you can sort of infer, okay, it must mean what's being talked about. And in the case of Esau, it's very literal. Esau means hairy. They saw that it was a hairy child, so they named him Hairy, right? Jacob, on the other hand, his name means supplanter. And that will come into play a bit later. But the other thing I want to note is that it's sort of glossed over here, but there is a large span of time that just took place, right? It says that Isaac was 60 years old when his wife had children, but it says he was 40 years old when he prayed to God that she would have children. So much like his father before him, who had to wait 25 years for Isaac, Isaac has had to wait 20 years for his children. And so we see this consistent theme of patience, this consistent theme of, having to trust God for a very long period of time. Because, while God's not always going to make us wait that long, he does view time differently than we do. The Bible says that the Lord is not slack as men count slackness and concerning fulfilling his promises, that he has a plan. And sometimes we get a little overeager. So it's important to remember to be patient as they were. But continuing on, in verse 27, it says, "So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, 'Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary.' Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, 'Sell me your birthright as of this day.' And Esau said, 'Look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me?' Then Jacob said, 'Swear to me as of this day.' So he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright." So a couple of things here. First off, what is a birthright? What does that mean? We don't really use that term too often today, but in biblical times, the birthright was essentially a way of saying you're going to get more of the inheritance than other people are. And it always went to the eldest son. Whoever was the firstborn son was typically given double a portion of everybody else. So if you had, in this case, you have 2 sons, right? So instead of splitting your, estate half and half, the older would get 2/3 and the younger would get 1/3, right? So that's kind of how that works. And so what Jacob is saying is, hey, legally speaking, I get to be treated as the firstborn and I get that double inheritance. And that's what you're agreeing to. And that's why it says Esau despised his birthright, because he traded that for a bowl of food, right? Just one meal, right? And it might have been very, very good. I haven't tasted the red stew. Maybe it's delicious. I have no idea. But to trade something as big as a birthright for that, I mean, he got swindled, man. I mean, he agreed to it, but man, that is a terrible deal. And that's also why it says his name is called Edom. Not because he got swindled, but because of the red stew. Edom means red. And if there's a group of people in the Bible called the Edomites, and they are actually the descendants of Esau, because he's also known as Edom. That's just a little knowledge tidbit for you. And then we take a break here to go back to Isaac, just briefly. And we see a sort of repeat of what happened in Abraham's time. And I won't spoil it, but you'll understand what I'm talking about in a moment. So chapter 26, verse 1. There was a famine in the land, besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham, and Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. That should sound familiar. Then the Lord appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land of which I shall tell you. Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I give all these lands, and I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the men of the place asked about his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he was afraid to say she is my wife, because he thought, lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she is beautiful to behold. Now it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw, and there was Isaac showing endearment to Rebekah his wife. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, Quite obviously she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, Because I said, Lest I die on account of her. And if that is not the apple falling close to the tree, what else could it be? I mean, that is Abraham to a T, right? Abraham did it twice, right? Abraham did it to Egypt, and he did it to Abimelech. And all I can think is Abimelech must be getting really frustrated with this family at this point. I mean, what is wrong with them is probably what he's thinking. He's like, this is the second time the same people have done this, right? Nobody else is coming to him and saying, oh, that's my sister, oh, that's my sister, oh, that's my sister. It's just these guys. They're just coming in and being like, yeah, no, that's my sister. You know, he's probably really frustrated with them at this point, but I just found it so fascinating that we see the same mistake perpetuated by the son as we do with the father. And that's just human nature. You know, I mean, we often take after our parents in both positive and negative ways. But that's just one of those small windows we do see into Isaac's life. And we're actually going to jump back into Jacob and Esau rather than Isaac. If we jump over to the next chapter, in chapter 27, we see that some time has passed. You know, it mentioned that he was 60 years old when they were born, and I don't know how old he is here, but clearly it has been some time because he's not able to see. His vision is gone. So in chapter 27, verse 1, it says, Now it came to pass, when Isaac was old, and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau his older son, and said to him, My son. And he answered him, Here I am. Then he said, Behold, now I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and make me savory food, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it. So Rebekah spoke to Jacob her son, saying, Indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, Bring me game and make savory food for me, that I may eat it, and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock, and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go, get them for me. And he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food just as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the savory food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. Boy, if it was not clear that Jacob was her favorite before, I think it is clear to say now. I mean, it told us at the beginning, right? It says Isaac liked Esau better, and Jacob was loved by his mother. And for the record, I am not encouraging parents to have favorites, right? I'm not saying that that's good. It's just telling us that is what the case was. But it's one thing to have favorites, and it's another thing to actively encourage your children to lie. That is a terrifying mom right there, is what that is. And, again, she's playing favorites. She likes Jacob better, and she's like, you know what? I want him to be blessed and not Esau, because Esau's not my favorite. So if anything, I suppose we could see this is the risk of having a favorite is that you're willing to go through more dastardly lengths. I don't know. But it's interesting that this wasn't Jacob's idea, because it was Jacob's idea to steal the birthright, right? That was his own thing. He was, being a shrewd businessman, right? He didn't cheat anybody. He didn't, he wasn't dishonest. He just said up front, here's what it's going to cost you. Here's what I want. If you want to give it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too, right? Now, you can argue that he took advantage of his brother because he knew his brother's nature and he knew that his brother wouldn't care and, things like that. And that's certainly true. He's very shrewd. But recall what the prophecy was. It says that the older brother would serve the younger brother. And that doesn't mean that God is causing these events to happen. It just means that he's predicted these events, right? He told them what was going to happen. He didn't say it had to happen, right? It was not this predestination. He just says, this is going to happen. The older one is going to be the servant. And we can see here why that's going to happen. If we continue on verse 18, so we're talking about Jacob here. He says, so he went to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Remember, he can't see. Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn, and have done just as you told me. Please arise, sit, and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord your God brought it to me. Boy, if that is not just a slap in the face, right? I mean, he's not just lying to his parents at this point. He's not just lying to his father and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm totally Esau." Yep. No, he says, he's bringing God into the situation, right? He's like, "Oh yeah, no, God helped me out. Yeah, it was totally God. He's the one that did it." It's like, man, if you couldn't get lower, you're already cheating your brother, you're lying to your parents, and now you're insulting God here. It's like, man. But moving on, he says, Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. So he can't see, but he can hear. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. Then he said, are you really my son Esau? And he said, I am. He said, bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's game, so that my soul may bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near now and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him. And he smelled the smell of his clothing, and blessed him, and said, surely the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. Therefore may God give you of the dew of heaven, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brethren, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. That is a heck of a blessing to steal, am I right? He's blessing him with prosperity. He says, you are going to be in charge. I'm going to give you all these servants. Your brethren are going to serve you. All the nations will bow to you. And he's getting all of this through deception. It's not through his own merits. It's not like, oh, Jacob earned this, right? No, he stole it from what was rightfully going to be Esau's. It was one thing to steal the inheritance, right? Okay, father's going to die. I'm going to get 2/3 of the stuff because I already agreed with Esau. That's fine. He goes a step beyond that and he says, all right, this other blessing that was supposed to be for Esau, he's like, nope, I'm going to go and get it. It's like, man, that's oof. And of course, Esau is none too happy. Esau comes back with the game and he says, all right, I'm back. I brought that food you like. And Isaac says, what do you mean? You weren't just here? What are you talking about? We just did this. Esau says, no, I just got back. What are you talking about? And of course, Esau's very unhappy about this. If we jump to verse 36. And Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now look, he has taken away my blessing. And he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Then Isaac answered and said to Esau, indeed, I have made him your master, and all his brethren I have given to him as servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What shall I do now for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And jumping to verse 41. So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Well, that's nice of him. He's at least going to wait until after the funeral. I'm kidding, of course. That's a terrifying sentiment. I mean, he's very, very angry. But to be angry to the point of wanting to kill your own brother, that is a level of anger that I don't think I have ever felt. I've been very angry at times, but I have never actively planned to kill a member of my family. I mean, that is a little bit scary. Man. And of course, Rebecca, the guardian angel over Jacob, basically at this point says she hears about this because some of the servants overheard Esau grumbling, and so she goes and tells Jacob, "Look, your brother wants to kill you. You got to get out of here." And so she sends him away under the guise of, oh well, he's going to go find a wife from all of those the people over here. The wife from over here that would just nobody wants him to get a wife here. He'll get a wife over there. So she sends him away. But yeah, I mean that's. You can almost understand it, though, in Esau's condition, right? It's like, it's one thing. I mean, he knew he was getting cheated out of the birthright, but he didn't care, right? But now he says, okay, hold on. The birthright thing was bad, but this is just shady. He's like, at least I gave away the birthright. This is actually stolen from me. I was going and doing what my father asked me to do. I was doing the right thing even, and it was stolen out from under my nose, right? And that's why he's so angry. And in Jacob's defense, on the one hand, he was doing what his mother asked. So it could be that he thought, well, we're supposed to obey our parents. I'll just do what she says and whatever happens, happens. But then he brings God into it and he says, oh, God is helping me do this. And it's like, it's a little sketchier. So maybe we can say he was kind of in on it and willing to be a little bit deceptive. Aside from his mother's influence even. But we're seeing here sort of that fulfillment of that prophecy, right? The younger will have ruler over the older. And so that's, even Isaac has pronounced that now. And he says, okay, well, I've given him authority over you now. So he officially has that. So he's allowed to tell you what to do. And so it's insult to injury because Esau's had this, stolen from him. And now he's essentially a slave of the guy that robbed him, right? It's just piling on the insults. And so Esau is very angry, and Jacob leaves. And this is where we kind of branch away from Esau for a bit. He'll come back into the story later, but the Bible focuses more on Jacob. And in particular, what happens next to Jacob is very interesting because we know Jacob knows of God, right? He mentioned God, and he says, oh, God showed me the game, and that's how I got it so fast, right? He at least knows God exists. He knows of God. But his willingness to incorporate God into the lie suggests that he's never really gotten to know God. He hasn't had that personal experience that Abraham and Isaac had where they could talk to him face to face. Because anybody that's had an experience with God does not remain unchanged, right? They seek to do good, right? Like Abraham and Isaac did. But then what happens to Jacob after he leaves sort of leads into the next part of his life. If we go to chapter 28, verse 10, we see an experience that Jacob has. Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. I want to emphasize that last line, and I did not know it. There are many people in the world today that are doing the wrong thing. Not always with wrong intentions, but doing something that is destructive or counterproductive to what God's will may be. But this clause of not knowing is an important one, because the Bible says that God will not hold us accountable if we couldn't have known better. Right? And so that's what we see here with Jacob. We see the evil that he has done to his brother. But now we see he did not know better. He did not know God. That's why God has to introduce himself and says, I am God. I am the one you've heard about. This is me. We're going to be acquainted now. And so it is from this point on that we see a change in Jacob. But we're going to leave that for part 2, because the Bible is often structured in this way. It says, here is what this person was like before they met God. Here is the moment they met God. And here's what happened afterwards. And that's so that we can see the changing effect that God has on a person's life, right? Obviously, we can experience that for ourselves and we can understand that, but we can see that it is consistent throughout Scripture that this happens to everyone that meets God. It's not just us, right? Everybody that has an encounter with God is changed, either for good or for evil. Some people we'll see as we go throughout the rest of Scripture turn away from God when they have the experience. They say, I don't want to have a part of that. Okay, if this is who you are, I don't want that. And other people, like Abraham, they didn't really know God before. And he says, all right, get up and go to this place. And Abraham says, okay, I'll do it. And so Jacob, again, he says, I didn't realize God was with me. I didn't even know God. This is God? So I had no idea. And he goes on and he says, if God will keep all these promises, if he will bless me and bless my descendants, I will serve him for sure. He says, all right, if that's you, I'm in. He said, that sounds awesome. That birthright I got's great, but your blessing sounds even better. I'm so in. Right? And that's really how we should all be viewing God. God is not, as I've mentioned several times, especially in the flood story, God is not a God of intense wrath and anger and hatred, just waiting for us to screw up so that he can hit us with a Zeus lightning bolt, right? That's not God. God is always looking for an excuse to forgive us. Now, he can't necessarily always forgive us just, carte blanche. It can't just be like, oh, yeah, Cain murdered his brother Abel. Oh, that's forgiven. Don't worry about it. There have to be standards. There have to be rules in place for God's kingdom to function, just like any other kingdom. But he is always looking to give people an excuse and give them a way out and help them to turn their lives around. And so we're going to see that in the second half of Jacob's story, that he does, in fact, turn his life around, and he is no longer the supplanter, and he is no longer the deceiver that he once was. But again, we're going to save that for the next video. If you would, one thing before you click away, again, let me know what you think of this background. Let me know if you like this setting more, if it feels more inviting. If you don't like it, if it's distracting, whatever, please let me know either in the comments or you can send me an email. It's in the description. It's higherwaysqnas, which is higherwaysqnas @gmail.com. If you'd send me, some feedback on either of those, that'd be great. Really appreciate it. So that was all I have for part 1 of Jacob the Deceiver here. So until the next video, I'll see you later.